Legends, welcome to the Willy Show. Thank you for spending some time with myself and my guest today. As this is a free show, if you want to personally support the show, follow the link in the description, or to freely support it, if you watch the episodes on YouTube, YouTube will split some of the advertising profit with me, helping me out, grow the show, make it better equipment, get more places with it. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Have a great day.
Terrible.
Cheers.
But
I'm worried about everything right now.
mate, everyone's worried about everything. It's the coronavirus 2.0. If you're wondering if there's an intro, this is it. Well,
Oh my God, are we live?
Well, I spoke before that the show is casual, and this is how casual it is. But H, thank you for coming on. You're a good supporter of mine, great supporter of mine. You've been on Instagram, mainly social media for, 12 months?
Yeah, for a while now.
And I guess we're connected through that mostly, with, I guess, the underlying thing being both our service to the nation. And it's such a weird thing, and we spoke about this before, but some people serve so much less and more, but there's always that underlying, I guess it's respect, but it's also just common terms you've got with people.
Yeah, I think it's sort of that. I find, Instagram for me, speaking on platforms briefly, was, the first, as we said, before in the shed. It was funny, when me and Willy, that was the first time we actually met physically before. So when we met, for the audience, when we met before in the shed, it was you feel like you've been here before, when you're following, and we're just talking about that, when you now, I would never have ever normally said this, but now you feel like you actually know someone. Because when you follow them for so long, or you've had phone calls and conversations and stuff like we have. But no, mate, it's an absolute pleasure to be on the show, and thanks for having me down here. This has been in the mix for a little while.
It's been in the mix for ages, but it was sort of when COVID first kicked off, and it's nah, look, we would rather hold it off and do it in person than rather do it over Zoom. I know Zoom and chat and phone calls, whatever. It's just not the same. Yeah,
I find now when I can be, it's not a matter of being picky, but now I've this common request to be on podcasts or do this or do that, whereas now I'm sort of I'll generally try and defer them if I have to wait a couple of months, because to me, the ones I've done, and the ones I first started on, I was in the middle of Australia, we were done with Life on the Line with Alex, but it just comes across, I believe, so much better when you're in the studio. So, well worth the wait, mate. And I'm in the big comfy chair here now too.
We're both in big comfy chairs. This is the gloriness of the podcast's called the Willy Show. This is the gloriness of it. But quickly, because I definitely have some people who don't really know who you are. So if anyone doesn't, it's 7 horses on Instagram. But and this is collapsing on me. But can you give a quick rundown of who you are?
Yeah, sure.
I guess what you've done. And we've said earlier, because we don't want to talk too much service, probably, and you spoke about Alex off Life on the Line. You and me both have done Life on the Lines, and I guess if you want to know about our military service, yours a lot more in depth than mine. Life on the Line podcast is excellent for that. To plug him, especially for that. It's like a historical review.
And again, as we're talking about before the show, mate. I think, Alex, and it's not just Alex, but, he steered it, so I'll refer to it as Life on the Line as opposed to Alex in person, but has definitely set, the benchmark. But, there's lots of other, great podcasts, out there now. But anyway, a little bit on myself. So I was in the military for 24 years and a bit, so just shy of 25 years. I spent several years up in the 1st Battalion, Big Blue 1RR, for all the 1RR boys there, and girls now. And I then went and did a selection course for Commandos. Commandos was just starting then. So initially I was always going to go, or I always wanted to go to Perth. I joined the Army to be in Special Forces. And then a couple of years, when I first applied, in my early years in 1R, I just had a couple of disciplinary mishaps, we'll call them, AWOL, DOI, assault and something else. And basically back then used to sit before the board and they were like, yeah, you need to chill out for a few years, buddy. And then in that next few years, the whole Commando concept developed. So anyway, short story, went down there, did selection, and did 18 odd years. I think it turned out being in what was then 4 RAR Commando and then turned into 2 RAR Commando. And also spent time on the selection wing at the Special Forces Training School as the senior instructor there, and across in 1 Commando Regiment as a Sergeant Major, and then several tours in Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, Timor, and a couple other places. Been decorated a few times for maybe doing things I shouldn't have done when I look back at it. No, but that's me. And now I've been out now since the end of 2014. Worked as a manager of the one of the contracts for a government agency in Kabul there for a little while. Then did some international business development for some American aerospace company and some other people. And then right now I'm sort of working on a couple of my own projects in my own business, and where I have spare time, I try and invest that time in giving back to the community. Just some sort of advocacy role for veterans, whether it's, talking on mental health somewhere. As most people are very aware now, with the release of the Brereton report in November, there was lots of, after that I did a lot of interviews to try and sort of just, educate people and help calibrate the comments that came out of that report, just to the general public, because, as you'll fast realise, and as you would know with your audience, but there's just, there's a lot that people don't know, and, why would they know it?
Yeah.
But, to me, where I can and where it's applicable, I try and sort of invest in filling in that information gap,
Yeah. Oh, it's a big thing too. I like how you said, like, people don't realise it. If you and me take terms and the way we speak to each other and whatever, it's just a normal thing for us because we've served, for an extended period of time, where it's sort of like we hear things like that report of it and we understand and can, put things around it. But then if you've never served, it's almost like you wouldn't know what it is. And I guess my experience with Special Forces only ever on the outside looking in to, a very shaded community, I guess.
Did you say shady, Willy, or shaded?
Well, it depends who you're talking to. But it's a community.
We'll make no jokes about that today.
Yeah, but it's a community you don't know that much about, and that's the whole purpose of Special Forces.
Yeah.
Even if you're in, people think that you're in, because people ask me hey, what do you know about this? I'm like, I've never served it. I don't know. But it's even further if you're that next step out. It's a bit rich for some comments on it. But I guess the stuff you've been doing, especially I've seen you on the news and whatever, trying not to then take the piss out of you being like, I can get a haircut. But it's that advocacy, I guess, for younger guys. And I think even if it's for, more senior guys who are involved, at least there's some faith, I guess, from the younger diggers being like, well, at least someone will fucking stick up for us if we are then involved in that.
Yeah, I think the few of us who sort of, got into it, I had no, plan, so to speak, that when that report came out, being the Brereton report we're talking about, when that came out, to, go on this escapade, it just kind of, actually happened. People started asking for statements and comments, started to get a few phone calls. And then it was like, well, and again, I was absolutely overwhelmed, especially that first few weeks, where there was I was very, very busy with, like I said, with a lot of media. And it was, to be honest, I wasn't naive to the state of morale and sadly some of the opinions of, current serving members and veterans. But I've got to tell you, I was quite, it sort of took me, it took a little notch out of me those few weeks, hundreds and hundreds of, DMs and other messages, from veterans, from veterans' families, from widows, from current serving soldiers, sailors and airmen. We should never forget the Air Force. Jokes. Yeah. And no, but in all seriousness, and it was kind of like, just the general morale and people had felt that they'd been left alone or a little bit, and that kind of, to be honest with you, that was a little bit fucking sad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't want to go into a lot that today, and I know that's not one of our agendas, for want of a better term, but to me it was just, there's a lot of work that needs to be done currently on soldiers feeling that they're actually that there's a care all the way down at the grassroots from. I think just there's too much time being spent in looking down as opposed to getting down. Like, I can remember the difference even, with different commanders and stuff, how they'd actually come down to the range and have a shoot with you or, see how you're going, and I think some of it's not their fault. I think a lot of, senior officers now, and especially general officers, they actually have just got so much shit they need to do, literally. They can't leave their office, so they've just become very much, out of touch. But anyway, that's another whole chat.
Well, I'd sort of say it's almost gone a step down again. You see some of the sergeants and the secos have got now that much shit on that it's like, fuck, we don't have time to do some of this. With the soldiers, and the most important people in the army is the individual soldier.
Yeah.
And it is.
As long as that gap, I've thought about this a lot, especially in the last few weeks. I've got gaps. I'd never say gaps become too wide, but if they were to focus on one single thing at the moment, they need to focus on decreasing the gap, because every single message and vibe that I got from, and like I said, hundreds, or there's probably thousands of them over that month from all different sorts of, I call them defence community, because they weren't just surgeon soldiers or veterans or whatever, like widows and whatnot. Is everyone just believes that gaps just become growing so wide that now the general officer just has not got the vibe of what's actually happening. A quick story, and then we'll jump to that transition stuff, because this really, to be honest, some of this stuff makes me sad. One of the guys who follows me, obviously a soldier, who follows me, and I'll purposely leave his name out of it. He sent me a picture. He got his certificate of service that you get after 4 years, or whatever it was. Anyway, as you would remember, they're generally on these, and for the audience, they're on these really actual nice bits of, like heavy paper, like almost cardboardy. Yeah, so that, like a piece of paper that certificate style paper that you'd frame. And it was sent to him and he showed it to me how he pulled it out, a Post-it note on it. Absolutely fucking buckled. As in, you couldn't even put it in a frame. It had literally been thrown around the post and screwed up and looked like someone wiped their boots on it. And that's how it came to him. And it's, like I said, it's those 1%ers, and we're completely off on a tangent now, but that's all right. It's those 1%ers that people get and see, and it's like, I sort of saw that. And to me, I kept that picture. I saved it. If there's ever an opportunity, I'll show that to a general and be like, mate, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I got mine, it was inside two strong bits of cardboard, and it was put in the center. You know what I mean? That little thing was done to make sure that when I got that certificate, it arrived in the finest order, because it meant something. And now it's just put in the envelope and half ripped.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And I guess even with that, even if it doesn't mean, it's like some soldiers, they don't care. Like they're like, I don't care about that. But at least it almost then gives them something to care about, because it's like, well, we care about this, even if you don't.
Yeah. It's setting the example. Like you set the example.
Well, I got
they should anyway.
Let's say heated argument. I don't know if I've actually said this on the podcast. This is my first podcast since being out of the forces.
Oh.
But I got in a very heated.
Willy's not wearing any clothes for the audience. He's gone a bit rebel since he left the military.
My cock, and that's it. But let's say a heated argument. Anyone who was in Canberra at the time would definitely remember it.
Yeah.
At the junior leaders conference, I invited all the section commanders of the infantry, the corporal sort of level, across all three services. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the comment was made about the PESAR weight being dropped back to 28 kilograms because a modern soldier won't carry over that. My hand went up, and at this point, I was sort of in this thing of like, I got cancer, I don't give a shit. And I'm like, look, sir, I've carried over that heaps of times. And it was, well, when have you been in? Like 2014? nah, if you've got in since 2012, no one in the forces will ever carry over 28 kilograms. You're lying to me, or your chain of command's failing you. And I'm like, 28 kilos?
Yeah.
He's like, well, what do you know, where have you ever carried over that? I'm like, DFSW course. like
100 times.
Put like all the time.
Yeah.
Like, put a mag 58 or a Maxima or whatever, and your body armor, and you're not far off that. Like you're right there, and you don't even have it. You're not thinking about a pack at that time.
Yeah, it's funny though, and you know, again, it's just another example where, you know, you're saying something that's factually happening, but someone's telling you, no, you're wrong. It's like, you know, I'm the soldier on the ground. Yeah. I'm the closest one to the fucking truth, you know. But anyway.
Yeah, but you know, I mentioned it there. Transition, my first podcast. Yeah, the transition's fucking. It's weird. I don't think I've found it hard yet. I've found it a kick up the arse to stay busy because I woke up like the first day like I don't have to do anything today.
But it's very early days for you, and look, I won't hide the fact that I actually asked before we started. I asked Willy if we could talk about transition a bit today because I think it's and also referred to as the gap. But that period, it's an extremely dangerous period of time for soldiers when they leave, and there's no sort of direct marker on it like on a calendar from the date you discharge until this date. Transitioning sort of encapsulates that period from, basically when I'm thinking of discharging and I might start doing some, medical wrap-ups or doing a civilian course or getting some skills or qualifications acknowledged or whatever, through to a period of time thereafter, which for some people might be 3 to 6 months. For other people, it might be for 12 months. And importantly, what I've found as well, other people, it like defers. It's like when you fucking want to take a year off uni, but, really all you're doing is, nothing.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is some people who get out, they'll go into a job and they'll keep themselves, so they'll go straight into a really busy, high-tempo job or whatever, and they haven't allowed themselves to transition, and then they'll leave that job in 12 months time, and then they'll fall into this state of whatever being and sort of literally not know what's happening. It's because that's their body now and their mind trying to acknowledge the fact that they left the army or they're transitioning. But I think it's as I was saying to Willy before the show, it's something that I think we all need to, certainly in our community and wide community, that is with the families and friends as well, needs to be understood a lot better. And it's something that I'd like to see a lot more, even research, put into it, as in, like run some case models or study cases of, from when a person leaves and, what are some of the feelings they're experiencing? How do they get along? Where they want to go to versus what they actually do. And when they actually feel, I hate this fucking word, as most of you know, but normal, whatever that is. But when they feel like normal again, like fully, because for me, I feel like I went through 2 or 3 different transition sort of belts, you know what I mean? And then now I feel like I'm, for a good year or 2 now, like actually fully transitioned, noting that we or most of us will never actually be normal. Again, whatever normal is, but yeah, you get the point. How have you found it, mate? Now I'm interviewing Willy.
Yeah, no, that's all right. That's the show's about me anyway. You're just here for good looks.
I'm just here for the bloody awnings.
Just here for the beer afterwards. Nah, a lot of free time. I struggled with my health a bit too, getting out, and I think that I put it down to probably sleeping pattern, different, whatever. But I think it's been like a dump of stress too. That there's not that underlying. Because I think one of the things of the army is you always have that underlying, like, fuck, I need to shave tonight or tomorrow morning. I need to be at work at 7:30. I need to do this.
Routine.
Yeah, but there's always like that little bit of like fear, stress too. And my last 6 months were the busiest 6 months of my whole career, by far. With being the section commander in charge of the guys, all the downgraded guys, it was fucked.
We spoke about that a couple of times.
It was fantastic. As look back on like the experience of it, but it was just busy. And I think that the stepping out, and then I'm like, oh, I have nothing to do in that space anymore. Just dumped a lot of like even adrenaline and stress for me. So I'm starting to feel bad the last couple of days. But yeah, and I've sort of know that I need to stay busy with things, but not overly busy. I talked with my doctor the other day, and he's like, take some time for yourself, but don't allow yourself to do nothing.
You know what? It's funny, that little piece there. So a couple of things that I've observed with me personally and many others is, so the routine component. So I get what you were saying because I said routine, but you're actually talking about something else. But as in, we're used to, you know, they may only be sort of small little pressures, but when you add them, it's like anything, you know, of many sayings, but, you know, you add up 1% 100 times, it's 100%.
Yeah.
But so all those little 1%ers, you know, they can really, really start accumulating. So those little pressures we're actually used to, and we sort of subconsciously like feed off them as in they're one of our drivers. So when you overlay that with the routine, and when you start taking, you know, these things away, and then the self-purpose and the other things, and when these are like, you know, instantly gone, and that's what a lot of people don't, you know, understand, and it's hard to explain, but I want to become better and better at trying to explain it through discussions and, you know, like this, for the, like I said, the wider community of, you know, what is this thing about transition that you guys are going on about? I mean, why do so many guys commit suicide through transition? You know, because that's how like serious this, you know, stage is. Anyway, what I was getting to is, so, you know, some of the biggest things that I think can help us is, and this is where the key, you know, where the mastery is, as you were saying, you know, the doctor's advice to you is like, you know, take a little bit of time for yourself. Well, see, this is the thing, you need to be real careful. So we need to take that time for ourselves, but we can't be like too dormant and not to, you know, so it's finding this happy medium of, I've got some purpose every day. Like I need to do these things, but I'm not too busy and still in this spin, because basically you need to trickle off, you know, like those, not like you describe them as fears, but, you know, all these, you know, subconscious little things that I need to be assured that I'm going to do tomorrow because, hey, I'm a fucking soldier in the army, or I'm a sailor in the Navy, or whatever it is. And I think that's, you know, one of the hardest things, and that's what people like don't understand. So to me, having a you know, to use a military term, you know, a lower activity period for a few months, and again, then you've got to overlay on that affordability. You may have a young family, like, and or other associated health issues, and this is where it gets fucking complex. And every single person, you know, is uniquely different. You know, that's the other thing. I don't judge people on, too many people, I think, you know, of our own breed and kind, judging other people, and they're like, oh fuck, mate, look, what's wrong with you? You've been out 3 months now, you got a good job. Well, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not that simple, you know. So to me, there's, you know, a lot to it, and, you know, we need to just, you know, get better at understanding it, and then, you know, supporting people going through it. And that's, you know, through all sorts of little things. But, you know, the proven things, you know, is, you know, health and fitness, you know, steering away from the, you know, the bad, we know what the bad coping mechanisms are. We all use them occasionally, whether it's drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, they're common ones. Yeah. But, you know, avoiding those because they don't help. You know, getting that routine back in, getting that self-purpose, self-worth, and just keeping those things, you know, moving until, you know, you're at a time where you can sort of go on autopilot. But yeah, it's, to me, it's, I actually find it quite fascinating, the psychology of it. Some people transition fine in like 2 or 3 months. Some people fucking 3 or 4 years. Some people never transition.
Yeah.
Like you see them literally walking around now with, you know, army bush hats on.
Yeah.
You know, what are you doing?
Yeah. Fuck you,
let it go, mate.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, I think there's it'd be a bit rich for me to speak on because I'm doing it, but I think for many it's the coolest identity you'll ever have. You're like, fuck, I was that guy. And now my work here, it's, you know, not that much. You still want to identify as that. And I think back to that. I'm like, fuck, I miss being like a young digger, you know, living on the base, fucking around. Like, that was awesome. I wish I'd appreciated how good that was then. Now I've got all this other shit going on. That you almost look back and you sort of envy where you were. I think that gap can just get bigger and bigger as you get older, and whatever you have other stuff break down.
Yeah, that's self-worth and that importance. Not an egotistical. I mean, we all have ego. I'm talking the healthy component of ego, though. You know, we all have that. And certainly, you know, when I left, you know, with the risk of sounding like, you know, but, you know, I had quite an established reputation. I'd done, many different jobs and Gucci overseas trips here, there, and different exchanges there and blah, blah, blah. And, when you're moving around inside that environment, like everyone fucking knows who you are. And they know, half of them know more about you than you know about you.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like next minute you're just, like it doesn't literally happen like this, but it kind of does. You're walking out on the street and you're not no one, but that's what people don't understand, and where we need to bridge that gap more is a lot of people will feel like now they're nobody, and that's that component that I'm talking about self-worth. It's like they've gone from being someone, and it doesn't matter, like someone is defined again, as I've said previously, in only your shoes.
Yeah.
So someone, and I'm not being making a punt, but if you're fucking been a private soldier in 5 hour, 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever for like 5 years, that's fine. You're still, because I know that person. He's been walking around like he's a senior digger because he fucking knows shit, right? Because he's one of the most senior soldiers. Then the next day he's not one of the senior soldiers. So it's not about rank or what about this. It's about how that person feels. And like you hit the nail on the head before, it's like one day, you're at the cafe and like you don't need to be in uniform, but you're a fucking soldier and no one can take that away from you. And the next day you're not. Now you'll always still be a soldier, but you know what I mean? Categorically, that's why I never call myself really a civilian. I'm like a fucking combat veteran.
And a hybrid fucking, like...
Because you never beat, but anyway.
It was the weirdest fucking thing. It was this only last Tuesday that was my last day. And I sort of like, because the unit's still on rear details at the time. So I worked the day, went up, said some goodbyes. The guys walked back down into the barracks, had a couple of Coles bags full of some fucking shit that I've got lying around, and sort of walked out. And as I was walking out past like BHQ, I'm like, so that's it. Like that's, you almost feel like it's going to be this grand affair. But I walked out, got in the car, turned the car, and sort of, that's it. Like it's, I know. It's weird, like, that's that chapter just slammed shut.
And the other side of that, it can be quite almost too emotional too. I remember a couple of months after I was, because for the last like 6 months or so I wasn't there, as I had so much leave to clear. So technically I wasn't discharged, but I was no longer at work, and I wasn't sort of going back to work ever again. It was just a date on a map. Anyway, one of the boys rang me up. He wanted to get me back, and they had this, the whole, most of the unit, whoever wasn't overseas and whatnot there, to give me this plaque. Well, it wasn't a plaque. It's fucking full size M4 on this piece of armor that certain organisations may put in the walls of their buildings overseas, and I wouldn't have that at home, for the record. Anyway, no, you get the point. Anyway, so it was quite a significant presenter, and I'll be honest, and I kind of regret it, but I literally could not, sort of just get myself to be there and receive it. And it's something, that I'll, probably always regret, but that's, again, I'm just giving you another component where, it's literally so emotional you can't fucking face even being, it's like, when someone wants to call you a hero on Anzac Day, you know what I mean? Most people, don't understand why we find that offensive. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think, like I said, the whole transition, period and subject, needs much more, deeper discussion. I'd love to see some really worthwhile, in-depth case studies on it.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'd also like to see a lot of analysis done on, suicides as well. Because that's not, that doesn't occur at the moment. And I think that'd, basically I look at it from a simplistic point of view, the more that would allow us to, or would certainly aid in some way of preventing things. So for the people who, when they have very, very difficult transitions, for them to be not as difficult, to be given the right amount of support and, just be nurtured through that until they're on their own merry way. Yeah. And then for the persons who find or feel that there's absolutely no way out of this fucking world and take their own lives, which, there's just been far too many doing that, even if we can stop, a few of them a year as opposed to current figures, which are absolutely atrocious.
It's just all the fucking time. It's like every couple of days, because like I guess the way I see it, most I think a lot of people do is through a fucking meme page. Fucking Pineapple Express.
Yeah.
Like, how the fuck am I finding out about veteran suicides through a fucking meme page meant to take the piss out of what we do? To put some, like, because taking the piss out of things is one of the best coping mechanisms for hardship. Why do you think dark humour exists in the army? But
exactly.
why is that page where?
Well, it's one of the unwritten tenets, one of the biggest unwritten tenets, Willy, on the selection course. Is, we look for that, and we're not literally selecting for that. It's not, like I said, it's not a characteristic that's fucking written down, but like, that guy, when, everything is absolutely going to shit and they're on their absolute last leg, that guy that cracks that joke, it's just enough to give that team a bit of wit, to give them a cackle and to keep them moving on. And that's all that matters. But you're right. I find it, so about face, and those guys, that site, as in that page, being Pineapple Express and a few others, do a great job of getting that information out there, but it's still like the fact there's no, that information is literally fought for. I'm not on Facebook at the moment, but I know there's a few Facebook pages who also try and just get that word out there in regards to, mental health in general, and or when there has been a suicide, or if there's a person that people are concerned about. But you've got to kind of like, these are pages and profiles that people have just fucking developed and made themselves, and have created their own network, and therefore created their own like worth and respect in the community, that people are giving them that information. And that's how we find out. Like that's just fucking absurd.
But then there's the other side of that the government as a whole is trying to get those pages taken down, and they do, like heaps of them. Like all the old ones, Lid Life, those, they're all gone because it takes away some of that face. So there is community standards and stuff, and some of it which we see as normal. You're probably like, fair enough, that is maybe a bit far. But at the same time, it's like, well, where are we getting this actual like information that needs to get through? And I know, like, they're the posts I see most shared around, and I'm like, they're resharing this, and it's not reshared; it's another fucking guy has killed himself. That's probably the big one of it just seems, and I can't put my finger on it. I don't know if you can, of what we're doing wrong.
I think. So I don't think anyone can, and I know you don't mean that literally, but I think putting there's not any one thing. But if I was to offer a few things, in regards to just that whole mental health thing, all the way through to, suicidal thoughts, or the act of suicide through to suicide, is there's just so many things here, so I'm just going to try and break it down a couple of minutes, because I'm just thinking out loud. I went down to go down the fucking ESOs, as in the ex-service organisations, which is another whole, bag that me and Willy were talking about it briefly before the show, that, apparently there's 2,500 of these. I can think of probably half a dozen or maybe a few more that are doing, good proactive work that are actually having an effect on people daily, and are demonstrating and showing, some real accountability with the grants they've got and what they're doing with them. And then there is just this, like, I'm not talking about hundreds, like 1,000 odd others that are like, what are you doing? So coming back on the point, so when someone, and this is where it all comes, or not all, but like where so much of it revolves around this transition period. So when people leave or go to leave or think about leaving, it's who are they tying in with, and what services and support are those organisations giving them? Well, more often than not, it's an ESO. So, we've got Open Arms and some other ones which are, government funded, and that's a component of DVA, the Department of Veteran Affairs. I think most people know that. And then there's some other, really proactive organisations. I don't want to start naming them all, because the other unfortunate reality is a lot of them infight amongst each other, and compete against each other for funding and profile to get better funding or to support what they're doing. And that's why, on purpose, I don't mention anybody, or I'll try not to mention any by name. The point of the matter is, they'll link up with these at the same time they're working with the government organisation, possibly through an advocate, to process a DVA claim. And it's this whole period where it becomes really frustrating. They essentially don't know, it's not like they don't know where to turn to. They just, it's so hard to kind of like sort through for them, and it just gets, more and more sort of cloudier or darker or murkier or whatever terminology you want to use. And what I mean by that, and I've been in that place myself a couple of times, is, and this will sound really weird, or it may sound weird to some people, is, you literally, there's that much going on in your head that you can't pull a single thing out of it to make it, to isolate that one problem and to make a decision and then to act upon it. So then what happens is I've got 20 things going on in my head. I'm not fucking able to do any of them. Yeah. And then in a week's time, it's 21. In 2 weeks' time, it's 24. And then 3 of them become code red, as in they're overdue, or the due date to fill in a form is over, or a doctor's referral has expired, and it just goes on from that. And that's what I mean, where they literally need, so there's so much work needs to be done in that space. Then coming back to your question, or one of the questions about, what can we do and what should we do, and, how do we provide better support to our community. And again, I emphasise, when I say our community, I'm not just talking about the veterans. I've supported and helped like a lot of partners who, that veteran actually might be okay, and he takes his fucking money and he runs, and then she's left there with the kids and whatever, and she's been given none of it, and she's used to, the support and everything, and like literally then has nothing. Yeah. The point of the matter is, if we could use one word that I think we need to get a lot better at, and that's actionary as opposed to reactionary. Yeah. So we need to and that's what I'm saying, if you follow someone from when they get out, if we have some process in place where at the moment officially there isn't. Yeah. So then that's why I bring up the point about ESOs. So depending what ESO they link up with, depending on how much support they get and the quality of that support and the sincerity of that support, because the sad reality is, as we discussed before, you've got some of these organisations that are literally committing fraud every other fucking day. Yeah. And that's where this person then just gets confused as to, where are they? And they end up in no man's land. Yeah. It's like,
I was like that.
Whereas to me, we need to be like literally tracking them process through process. They need to be guided. And that's where too many organisations, components of DVA and other elements are reactionary. Like if they hear about, hey, Willy's not doing well fucking no worries, mate. The cavalry will come.
Yeah.
But what happens for the 2 weeks when Willy just pretends he's doing okay?
Yeah.
Because again, sadly, I've done that. I can sit there all day and like fucking act that everything's okay. And we all can.
Yeah.
No one actually knows what's going on except, yourself. And when you're not honest, or there's a facade being put up, or you're hiding something or whatever, you can get in some real dangerous ground there. And that's, well, there's about 20 different areas there, in my opinion, that we need to tackle. But that's probably, if I was to say what some of my big concerns are in regards to, veterans and just trying to sort of help where I can, that's an area I believe we really need, to put some fucking energy into.
Yeah, I agree. And I the biggest time I felt that when you're saying you've got that much going on, you can't do any of it, was when I was medically discharging, when I first got my medical separation. I was section commander, with a lot of guys, more guys than you'd normally have, because you're not field in the section. I was back home, rear details, but with 20 guys. But then I had all this stuff. I had all my own doctor's appointments, my own discharge. There's fucking so much in a medical discharge. There's way too much. But then I had my actual job too, which was still happening. It wasn't that my job stopped. I still had my job to do up until the day I left. And the medical separation was just that difficult with what do I actually need to do here? where do I take my fucking body armor to get rid of? You know, it's everything like that.
Just for the listeners,
that out would be fucking so good.
Just for the audience, real quickly, it's really important to understand one key thing that Willy said there is when you the way that military works, doesn't matter Army, Navy, Air Force. So they have designated positions. So, for example, this unit can have, I'll just keep round figures to make it easy, 100 positions. Those 100 positions are filled. So when Willy goes to discharge, his number position, just say, whatever it is, 17, pick a number. So his position number is 17. So until number 17 is actually discharged, like that position can't be filled. Now, there might be a slight overlap there of whatever they're allowed to have an establishment at like 102 as opposed to 100. The point of the matter is, if you've got 20 or 30 guys in a unit that are discharging, all those jobs then get, they've either got to do them themselves, so continue to do them as Willy said, or what they have to do is they'll be pushed down to someone else. So therefore, someone below them who's already got whatever they've got going on and now has to carry those other jobs. Now, I'm not naive to think, because I know categorically it does. I know this happens in a lot of big civilian businesses and corporations and whatnot, but they can also have that person hired and you under training and whatnot. So as you're moving out or whatever, but you get the point. And this is another area where those additional stresses are taken. So when someone's trying to leave, and there's a lot of stress associated with that, because this comes back to my point, transition period. So he's trying to discharge. He's technically still transitioning. Transitioning does not start after discharge. It starts prior to. So Willy's transitioning, and he's still got to do all this other stuff. Whereas to me, there needs to be a greater understanding on different workloads and the fucking emotional burden, like you started to allude to, of the process you're going through, so then to having to go back and do anything else, you know what I mean? And then the nature of the beast and way our mindsets are, we start to feel guilty and fuck shit, because what's happening? You're not doing your job properly. Yeah. Even though you're discharging, technically my mindset is, fuck, I didn't do my job properly today because I didn't go and help those other two soldiers, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. So, there's just so much to it all that's just taken, actually it's not taken for granted. I don't think it's known or just, understood or has been, comprehensively fucking pulled apart. Yeah. And okay, how do we fix, or how do we assist and support soldiers, sailors, and what are those other guys? Through airmen. Airmen and women, yeah. How do we assist and support them through that transition period? So, it's as you can see, I'm a little bit sort of passionate about it. I'd like any way I can to sort of input and help out. I think, hopefully, in the coming year, with a few other things that we've instigated, there'll be more questions asked about this period, and hopefully through those, different things that ministers at the moment I know I've got on their lap, they'll be asking for some advice, and, we can hopefully provide some better support, mate.
Well, and I hope that's, what is asked. I hope that the ministers and whoever ask people for advice rather than, do this, do that, because it worked in a civil aspect. Well, maybe what happens in your office doesn't work for us, because a lot of the time you're dealing with 20-year-old young men moving on because they're sick of their fucking job, who aren't really that sick of it. They just see the grass is greener and, okay, I'm moving on. I know me, and I was over-supported. I'm in a one-off situation, I guess, with the amount of support I've got with everything. And even then it was tough. I had a massive network already, and a big community willing to help me from all levels too. But even then it was, and medical separation has a lot more benefits than normal, just administratively separated. Well, not even not admin. Admin's another whole step again, but just discharge.
A normal discharge, yeah.
It's so hard, because I'm like, you don't get any, medical, you just, little things are triggered for you. This is happening, you're seeing this person. Like next Wednesday, I'm catching up with a rep from DVA to see how I'm doing. But as far as I'm aware, with your normal discharge, you don't get some of that. It's a weird
Yeah, there's a lot of things, and then having been involved in that process in discharging guys out for different reasons. If it's a performance related thing, if they went through a drug test, if it's a discipline related matter, like they've incurred a civilian criminal offence or something. There's all these other reasons, but the issue when they happen, and especially with the drug one, and I'm by no means advocating any fucking use of drugs in defence, but the reality is defence is a crosscut of society. So what I saw on several occasions, some of the best operators I know, they had a bit of a big Friday night once, and again, I'm not condoning that, but the point of the matter is then they get, that's their career over and done with. Now, in some cases, I've got another theory, and knowing some of the individuals and their life story is they may not have been using any drugs whatsoever in their whole fucking life, up until their third tour in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying this is right or justifying it. I'm just giving a different perspective that people don't want to talk about or aren't talking about. We need to talk about these things. So why is that person now taking drugs? And then now they are taking drugs and they failed a drug test. What support were they given? Because, every single person, I know was immediately discharged. Yeah. And again, I'm not saying to change the military's drug policy, but I'm saying we need to also look at scrutinise that areas, because when there are other coping mechanisms, because that's what that is, not all the time, but more often than not, and in particular in the case of the sort of broad scenario I was painting then. So when it's being used as a coping mechanism, the same as alcoholism and everything else, like what are we doing to support that member, off and out of that, as opposed to just fucking literally discharging. Now, coming back on the discharge points that you were making and this whole transition piece, I can tell you now, those guys, when they're discharged under those circumstances, that just does not, it just does not go down well. It becomes an absolute mess because they're literally brokenhearted, because, they've discharging under those conditions, and yes, they made a choice, and yes, fucking save all your stuff. I've got it all. It doesn't negate the point. The point of the matter is, that they've been ashamed out, and they're literally next minute. And the other thing, for the listeners is, that happens also a lot more quickly, generally speaking. So as opposed to, if I've, got a mental health thing, or got a spinal injury, or, I want to go and do 12-month study or whatever, they literally within 14 days, they can be a civilian from fucking coming back from Afghanistan or something, you know what I mean? I don't think that is a good policy. I think, we should be putting them through and not asking them. They should be going through whilst they're still serving, because that way they're under our care, through proper rehabilitation programs, through, different other educational programs and whatever, and helping them get out, slowly and more gently, still feeling some fucking worth, as opposed to, literally kicking them out, as the term, is, or as the phrase goes, you've been kicked out for, because you did this on Friday night or whatever. So it's just another whole point which just all ropes back into it. Because I know that has severely impacted on some close friends of mine, their mental health and well-being, and frankly it took them fucking years and years to sort of get their head straight just about the that one issue, or not one issue, about that issue, or how they were discharged. So yeah. So Willy, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah, go for it.
On behalf of the audience.
About 4.5 inches. Mate.
Damn it.
Around.
Right, now you all know that's it. No. Mate, what are some of the things that I know you said some stuff on your story and posts of recent time. Now you are transitioning without sort of letting any cats out of the bag. And this is by no means staged. I'm dead set cold asking this to Willy, just for the listeners. He hasn't set me up here. Mate, what are some of the things that you might think of doing now, like your discharge? Like, what are some things you run through your head? Because I'm sure recently you've had a few.
I have. I'm in a weird case, and I'm glad that I'm in 0.01% case. I'm glad that I'm in it and it's not someone else with my disease. So, because the traditional way of getting out, say, in university or whatever, it doesn't work for my time frame, life expectancy. It just doesn't work in that. And I think some people don't understand it, and that's fine. You don't need to. It's my thing to understand, I guess. So that normal sort of way of that or retraining, I guess, is off the cards for me. So what I really want to do is still be linked in with things that make me happy. And medical discharge was forced. Well, it's not forced upon me by anyone. It is the correct thing in defence. It's the way it works. But let's say a forced retirement.
I think that's a smart thing, though, mate. To be honest,
yeah.
I give you that little bit of security and it's just that comes back onto some things you're saying. You mightn't see it now, but fucking trust me, mate. It'll be just that little. It's not little, but we call it little. But essentially that peace of mind.
Yeah.
Which is worth a lot.
I know.
As in mentally and
friend of mine,
fucking spiritually.
Was like, Willy, you, if anything, at this point are being restricted by this place rather than the potential you can have, because your potential in soldiering is done now. It doesn't matter how good you were or could be. It's not there because defence can't let you do anything with this chip, which is fair enough. But things that make me happy and give me more so than happiness, I guess, purpose is defence community and I guess the cancer community, if you'll call it that. And to be even a passive player in that, I think I'll become more of and I think I have become more passive in the way I'm in it than an active rep. I'll always be somewhat active as spokesman. If someone wants me to talk about something, I'll talk about it. But I think as far as their cancer awareness, my passive representation for it is by living and doing something and sharing that, I guess, gives people a bit of like, oh shit, your life isn't over when this happens. So I don't have, and I think people have this illusion, I do have cats. I don't have cats in the back. My whole
He's got a fucking cat in the back. I can see it. It's over there.
I'm starting this business.
Where is that cat anyway?
The cat's dead. She's out the back somewhere.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, that's all right.
Very sensitive of me there. Where is your cat?
That's all right.
I do remember seeing it.
No worries, some of the boys were commenting on that post, mate. Oh, mate, she's been dead for 6 months. She's buried her now.
Rip.
Fucking savagely. But look, it's a hard one that I don't really have an answer for. But at the moment, so in my diary every day, and I was talking to my partner about this. As long as and she's like, as long as you work out in the day, at least you can say you've completed a task for the day. So every day, my 3 things to do, or really 4, but I'll say 3, is to write. It doesn't matter how much I write, but write into, because I'm putting a book together.
Yep.
Everything. So is to write, to do some form of exercise, and read. And I think that covers a lot of bases of a healthy understanding of both. I'm putting stuff out there on exercising, which everyone knows the benefits of that, but also to read and learn. And none of those have a great, you need to do this much. It is just as long as I do that to that degree. Yesterday I wrote 1,600 words. Today I wrote 200. But I just had that feeling of I'm done now. And that's it. Pack it up. I'm not going to grind on through this, because why do I need to grind on through this? There's those, and then there's the aspect, I guess, of my media stuff being like my YouTube vlog, and then the podcast, which are separate. The YouTube vlog is an important one to me. I think that has bigger growth potential for me than some of the traditional social medias. Well, the plan always was when I discharged, COVID has thrown everything out the window.
Fucking COVID.
Because it was going to be, as soon as I discharged, I was going to travel for 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
Last time I was overseas was...
Actually, I remember talking to you about that.
That was all it was. And then I pushed my discharge back because of COVID, which they were letting people do, which is fantastic, because it's like, hey, look, there's no job. When it first went down...
There's no point in getting out
nothing. Now. We don't know how bad this is either. So that was great. But then I was like, in 6 months, I'll easily be able to travel. Nothing. So all I wanted to do was travel for 6 months and follow myself doing that. And that isn't really feasible, I guess, at the moment. Although I come up with some grand schemes of how to get out of getting out of Australia is the hard part.
I can get you out of Australia. I just can't get you back in.
No, I don't care about coming back in. I'm good. No, I'll figure they won't not let me back in. If I rock up at the airport and I'm like, hey, I'm an Australian.
You got Scotty on speed dial, mate.
Yeah,
You'll be all right.
exactly. I fucking don't. I wish I did. But yeah, getting out is the hard part. But that's what I'll do because I want, and a lot of like normal jobs turn me off, and they shouldn't turn people off. But it turns me off because it's like, oh, do I want to go back into working that 9 to 5 or in defence, 7 to 4, whatever, of stuff when I may not have that long left. I've got decent savings from defence because I was diagnosed pretty much straight after my tour, so I never really spent the tour money.
Yeah.
Except on car cleaning products.
That's our in-house joke.
Yeah, bloody hell. It's not that in-house.
Actually, that's
that's
the world's joke. No, every time I see Willy post something, he's like cleaning his car and posting like 10 different posts on all the different stages of cleaning it. I generally always send him some fucking comment like, "Okay, we got it. You're cleaning your car, mate." It's kind of a bit of a joke. Anyway,
I just want to stuff a lot of that life experience into however long I've got. Which could backfire and I live forever, then I'm just broke. But I really want to pack down. And it's interesting, I'm not that interested in going to like your really touristy countries. Like I would like to, and I've seen some guys do it recently, travel into like Afghanistan, Iraq again, but as a fucking tourist.
Yeah.
It's all doable. And I feel like I've got a little bit of experience there, more so than some people who go and travelling. This is how you get fucking killed. You don't know what you're doing. But that's what I want to do.
I think that's a good, even though it's a fairly broad and fluid plan, which I think's obviously an absolute essential component, mate. But I think that's where your head and your mindset's at's commendable, mate. I think it's a great idea. The fact that you're writing, that's you give back. The couple of points that Willy mentioned about doing those that I would just like to talk about. Which I think is really, really important to like all of our mental health, is having yourself write and do those couple of things a day and set those couple of things. I know Andy, it's got that thing out, Andy Frizella, however you pronounce his last name. It's got that 75 hard out that, people get onto at the moment, which is, you've got to train once a day, you've got to do this, you've got to read however many pages out of a book and blah, blah, blah. There was some other stuff I was doing, with a company called The Routine, which is now called the Journal House, I think. Anyway, they brought essentially, like a little daily journal out. And, it was like, and it's a real simple things. It was all on one page, like what exercise you're going to do today, what's your 3 meals and your snacks planned. It's got like a little water scale chart there that you've drunk your 3 or 4 litres. And this all sounds like, I'm sure there's some fucking people there having a giggle about it now, but like having those things and just ticking them off, especially when like coming back to that, if you're in that stage or phase I was talking about earlier, when you're really not well, let alone just if you're well, but you're trying to keep things moving. And one thing, I had to teach, not teach myself, but reiterate to myself a few times, because I can be so hard on my fucking self. Like I'm super motivated, I'm a high performance individual, my head goes a million miles an hour. So when all that isn't happening like clockwork, then, I can be then that person who ruminates a little bit, which is if people aren't aware of what that is, Google it. But briefly, it's that circular or spiraling focus and thoughts on a simple thing, but essentially making it worse and worse or bigger and bigger than it actually is, in an unhealthy way, as opposed to thinking about something in a healthy way. Anyway, the point is, by having those lists and doing those tick offs and check offs, and to be kind on your canning it and taking it personal, and like, okay, no, I see it, like whatever. It's like, do you ever stop and think actually why that person didn't show up? Like if you said you'd meet him out for dinner, or meet him here for beers, or come over at this time, or let's go to the gym or do this, rather than like having a go at them of why they're not there, you should be thinking, and that also falls back into the other piece I was saying earlier about being, proactive, and actionary as opposed to reactionary. It's like fucking drive to their house.
Yeah.
Like so many of these close calls, or the suicides that have eventuated, and also close calls, are literally, you know, someone just driven around there and like to check on them moments later.
Yeah.
You know, so you never know, you know what I mean? Like exactly what's going on with someone. And I think we could all like learn a lot more and increase, you know, our emotional intelligence, and just, you know, before you make a comment or, you know, have those more instinctive initial thoughts, maybe, you know, to just pause for a second and go, you know what, there might be something more to this. What could possibly that more to this be? And then sort of, you know, looking at it from a different angle.
Yeah.
So
And there's also that on the other side of that too is being a reliable friend, and that's on both. And I think especially with your friends, you with the people that you should be your friends should be the people which you can also say, hey, I'm not coming to this because of, but also the people you're comfortable to ask, hey, like, are you all right?
yeah,
And it's funny because the thing is pattern sending. Having patterns change is a big one. So, say, you know, I'm always on time to stuff. And military guys tend to be. And it's drilled into us. But if you see one of your mates, you know, of course everyone, you know, gets stuck in traffic or this happens or whatever. But if then you don't hear from them or this, you know, well, that's not common for H or Willy. Maybe I'll ask what's going on. To sort of be in sync with your friends as much.
yeah. It's amazing you mentioned, like, you know, we used to call it pattern of life, and we're, you know, targeting terrorists and stuff in Afghanistan, and that was one of our main, you know, combat indicators to learn the person. You know, we'd be like, you know, once soon as something happens outside of their pattern of life, and what we mean by that for the listeners is exactly that. Everyone's life has a pattern, and even if it's not rigid, you know, you're either working shift, you're not working, you're doing like, so it almost doesn't matter. There will be a pattern there, and the closest people to you will know that pattern. And in our case, you know, when we put, you know, multiple layers of surveillance onto a fucking terrorist in Afghanistan village, you know, we would learn their pattern. And then that's, you know, we'd find a component of that pattern to target them, whether it was, you know, every Thursday morning they went, you know, on their motorbike across to that village to have fucking, you know, cups of tea with their uncle or whatever it was. You get the point. And you're dead right again. Sometimes it, you know, you'll ask people those couple of questions after an incident. It's like, well, did you notice things? It's like, well, no, I hadn't seen him for 3 or 4 weeks. It's like, oh, how often do you normally catch up? Well, we normally catch up every Monday. So hang on a second. So you normally see him every Monday, but you haven't seen him for the last 4 Mondays.
Yeah.
And then, you know what I mean? And it's just, and people literally, you know, like you think it's common, it's not that common. Like, because then people literally just shrug their shoulders because then you know, they see it because it's sitting there in front of them that, wow, I've just totally missed the ball there. And it's not that, you know, please don't get me wrong, I'm not, you know, proportioning any blame or anything like that here. I'd never do that. But what I'm saying is, you know, I think we can all try, you know, to be more, you know, emotionally intelligent and just look out for things more in each other, you know.
Yeah. Bit off topic, but where's next? You know, you sort of asked me about where I'm going in next couple of years. Where's in the next like 5 years? What's sort of your plans of where you want to end up without leaving anything out?
Yeah, without leaving anything out.
Well, sorry, no, I'm just
kidding.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. There is, I really want to build my business up more, which, you know, we were kind of sort of, when I say we, that's talking me in a third person, seeing where, and a third person, me in a third person, seeing where that goes and what I want to do with that.
If you don't mind me buttoning, what is your business? Like what?
So well, that is actually a fair question because it isn't, you know, telegraphed widely and clearly, but what it will develop into and what I'm, you know, finishing and just sort of finding the foundations for, the right foundations, is I'll get more and more into coaching.
Yeah.
And when I say coaching, you know, I'm keeping it that broad because at the moment I've got some clients which are in, you know, elite level, national elite level sporting teams, and just helping them get through, you know, some mindset issues, just different, you know, things that they're feeling and experiencing. It's literally just talking them through it. So I don't have any, you particular qualification. And with life coaching, specifically in Australia, there is, 2 registered, national institutes or governing bodies, for want of a better term. There are some courses you can do and all this. And I don't say this, ignorantly or arrogantly. I haven't done any of those, but I sort of look at those as like, well, I'm not saying you need to have fucked your life up to be a good life coach, and I don't think I've fucked my life up, but I do 100% acknowledge I've made some absolute fucking terrible, poor choices. I've made some, very, very big mistakes, and I'm talking all the way from, financially, personally in relationships, career-wise, like all sorts of different things. I've made some fucking mega stupid things. I've had some, really, really fucking terrible stretches for, a few months at a time on a couple of occasions on different coping mechanisms. So the point I'm making, when I look at those things and then everything else I've learnt, done and read, and just what I've done with myself in the last few years in particular, what I want to do is be able to like pass that on. So when I'm talking about coaching, whether it's, strategic leadership, in a corporate sense, whether it's, high performance individuals in sporting teams, whether it's, Joe Blogs literally from the fucking corner store. Like I said, at the moment, just through my time, I can only afford time-wise to have like several, clients that are on that one-on-one, status. So because of that, that's kind of where I am now. Why I'm not really, advertising or pushing out once more, because I need those platforms and some other things finished that I'm working on in the background. And then, bringing things on, which I'll fast realise like a fucking, an assistant or a virtual assistant at least. So that's one whole component, and that will be 7 Horses Co. And I want that all the way developed until, it'll be an actual physical location in the southeast quadrant of Queensland, where there'll be, a premise, being a fucking ranch, for people to come to. I'm a huge advocate, again, which has been scientifically backed, of therapy through animals and being outdoors. So, the beach is good, but the realities of, having a beach house and all that. So the second best thing is to get out of the city. So it's to go the other way. So in Australia, or for the eastern seaboard, is to head west. You get the point. I've personally done some equine therapy. So that would be another component of it, as in, just not just being in and around the other animals on a small farm, but to have specifically someone there to do equine therapy. So that's kind of where it'll all go, and I'm confident it'll get there. But as you can imagine, there's a long road to go to. And then I don't want that just to be associated with and for veterans, but they would be a primary, they'd be primary users, so to speak. One thing I need to, think about along that way, I see people who start their own orgs, and to me, when you do that, you're just getting sort of hindered with so many different things. So I'd like to probably just keep it a lot more simple than that, and use monies that I raise myself, as opposed to setting it up as a charity or whatever. But when it gets close to that time, I'll decide which way, or I'll be advised more accurately as to which way that should go. So that's kind of where my passion is, and everything else that I'm doing at the moment and working for is to get to there. It's just been, for a few different reasons, a bit of a slower, a bumpier road than I would have wanted. But yeah, my passion is 100% just helping people. And I've just, having been through, like I was alluded to, some of the things myself, like the things that got me out of the places I was, and I'm talking extreme cases of different things. It's like, to me, you can almost turn someone around on a dime, just getting them out of the environments they're in. And even though I know I'm not, taking away from the different veteran retreats and whatnot that are already established in Australia around the place, and I'm learning of more each and every other day, and I think a lot of them are doing a great job. But to me, that's just a fundamental, piece, and we need to do. There could never be too many of those places where, people, because the thing with people going to, retreats, if we want to use that word, and mine's not going to be called a fucking retreat. It's going to be called Rancho Relaxo. But anyway, or Rancho Family. But you get the point, is that they've got to, I find if people need some sort of link, and if they've got some sort of familiarity, they're more inclined to go. Like when a person's, you know, in a particular depressive state or whatever, they don't fucking want to go to a stranger's place in strange land, you know, because that's literally how they look at it. Strange, anxiety. You know, if they've got some sort of link, and even they just know you, and that's why, you know, building up a social profile is important to me, because I've, you know, just been, you know, so fortunate with the people I've met, contacts I've made and stuff through social media. You know, I've had a, you know, very, very positive, because I know a lot of people haven't had a positive experience. That's why I make the point on there. So building that, using that, to, you know, create that greater awareness, to then, you know, to bring people to that location, or to let them, you know, at least know about it. Because like I said, if they've got that relationship with you, they're more likely or inclined to sort of try it. Or someone may reach out to you and tell you, you know, about someone they know, which, you know, happens a lot with me as well, of someone they know who's going through whatever problems. And then, you know, hey, would you be interested in getting in contact with them, having a chat with them? Yep, sure, 100%. You know, so that's that component. The other thing I spend a lot of time doing is working with and for Disaster Relief Australia. Disaster Relief Australia is a, you know, primarily veteran founded organisation which does disaster relief. Some people may have formerly know it or heard of it as Team Rubicon Australia. So Team Rubicon started in the US with veterans. So it's just taking all those skills, and that's why I'm, you know, so passionate about it. And one of the main reasons I'm down here in Adelaide at the moment. But taking those skills and experiences that veterans have, because the sad reality is we're actually really fucking good working in disaster areas, because most of the places they send us are shitholes as opposed to Paris. So when you look at those skills that we take for granted, and just being able to run operations, as in the logistics and everything in areas that, you know, in this case, been recently hit by disaster, whether it's bushfires, a cyclone, floods, or whatever. So I spend, yeah, like I said, a lot of time, you know, with them, and I can't recommend that organisation strongly enough. You know, and a huge, you know, plug to them. And there's a lot of, you don't need to be a veteran as well. If there's any listeners on there, oh, I'm not a veteran, you don't need to be a veteran. You know, there's a lot of, and you don't need to be an ex-emergency services personnel either. You can just be a, you know, yeah, neither one of those. I was going to say complete civilian, whatever that is, but that sounds a bit weird. Yeah, but you get the point. You know, but the what it does, and it was actually recommended to me, you know, many years ago, and I always kind of wanted to get involved in some organisation as, you know, my give back thing. And you know, a psychologist said to me a few years ago, "Is like, you know, have you ever thought about volunteering?" And I was like, well, yeah, I've thought about it, but, you know, like right at the moment, I'm not doing it. I haven't got time. We always make these excuses, but I found when I started doing some volunteer work, I just found that really, you know, I just found it really, really rewarding. You know, so that's just another thing too, coming back onto some of the points I was making earlier on, you know, things that you can do when you discharge, or if you're not feeling well or whatever. You know, there's a lot of, you know, amazing volunteer organisations out there doing some really, really good work. And, you know, I definitely strongly recommend, you know, giving them a crack or asking around about them. But Disaster Relief Australia, you know, have got some really good funding through some government grants, have got some really good funding through some large corporate identities. And they're very, very much now well established on the map, so to speak. You know, through the bushfires being a year ago, you know, the worst fires Australia's ever seen. You know, we're running, you know, dozens of operations in different areas. You know, so you're talking a real significant contribution on the ground, and a real contribution, which is important to me. You know, there's not people sitting back, you know, shuffling papers and doing stuff. You're on the ground. You know, in a flood, you're on the ground. In a cyclone, you're on the ground. In a bushfire, or, you know, post those disasters. I should make the point, which is extremely critical. When those events are taking place, as most people know, the emergency services are there on the ground. That's their job and responsibility. Yeah. But once that's over, the emergency services go home to, rest and do what they, whatever's coming for them next. So it's that void there that needs filling, and that's where, Disaster Relief Australia, fills that void, and they do an amazing job. And just a absolute great group of people. And you're always running into, different people you knew from, whether it was this operation or you saw them last in Afghanistan or in Iraq, or you're in 1RR with them or whatever. So, it's a bit of a reunion in a good way. And you also meet lots of, new amazing friends who have got, their own stories and tales of, like some of the firefighters I've met, some of the police I've met. It's just a great place, great organisation to be part of. Yeah. So that's, there's a little snapshot of what soaks up, a chunk of my time.
Yeah, fucking absolutely. What about personal goals? Other than I guess disaster relief is, a voluntary big thing, and you're, I don't want to call it business, but I guess in the business, where do you want to be?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Willie. Mate, I'm still, to be honest, finding, that place. I do up plans, and I'm, comfortable at this stage, with them. It's only in the last few years that my plan has stayed, relatively steadfast. So personally, it ties back into getting those things established, being, a absolute good figure and advocate within Disaster Relief Australia, and having some permanency there. And then, there's some other things, I've certainly, thought about, which would be doing some study. But, it's not a matter of, whether I'd be able to do it or whatever. And I always really don't like using the, excuse about time or whatever. But to me, I've got to be a realist as, do you want to actually start studying now? And then by the time you complete it, how much effect would you have now? I believe there's still a lot of runs on the board, or a lot of runs left in the paddock that, there would certainly be some worthwhile benefit in doing that. But to me, my, number one sort of personal things is just fucking literally just getting everything that I want to do in order and achieved and done. So just to do all those things and sort of go, okay, now, I've done all that. And then, to become, more of a advocate and a spokesperson, within our community. I'd love to, hear, and I've started to, reach out to, some political identities, when they're doing, the work that they're doing, and they're trying to, glean this information about, our community, what's happening on the ground. To me, we need people in amongst that who, can string, have got some intellectual, horsepower, and can, contribute to those processes. If we don't contribute them, so that'd be another area I'd like to see. And there's, some work going on in the back channels. I just don't want to, say too much yet, because it's very much in its infancy. I think I'm too sort of probably rough for politics. I'm not suggesting that for a minute, but certainly I believe, that people in the political arena need some quite strong, and they need frank and forthright advice. We can all sit here and use the fucking big words if we want to, but I'm sorry, sir, if it's fucked, it's fucked. But importantly, be able to tell them why you believe it's got to a state it has on whatever the topic may be. We're not just talking about veteran topics, there's other topics. I've worked a lot in the agricultural industry in the last, couple of years as well. And, the things that, that's happened, through the worst drought this country's ever incurred, and the business going on with China and tariffs, there's just so many things, to me, that need work done on them. I don't know how better to put it. Yeah. So to me, as I get the horsepower, and get these other things, are much better organised, so that, when someone's booking something, there's a lot more automated process there. Like I was talking about, referring to platforms and foundations, that's what I'm talking about. So that leaves me to have more time to do, other things. But yeah, I'd certainly like to, do, a lot more influence and, speaking in those, certain areas. And then, part of the, whole, the, Seven Horses Co, is also, doing some keynote speaking, guest speaking, motivational speaking as well. So that's some other stuff, that we, are building up as well in the background, doing, again, it's just time. And for me, that's, it jumps me on a huge point for me. Like, most days I'm relatively good in time management. Some days I can suffer from like focus and just, where the fuck did the day go? But time in general, to me, I'm like, just where does it go? And because, I can be so sort of critical of myself and stack things up, you know what I mean? It's like, I often just sit there and just go like, where did that month go? Where did those weeks did it go? Why, haven't I, done these 10 things yet? Why, even though they're on, you know what I mean? Like, and I find, we all seem to sort of think that when it comes to like, Christmas or New Year's again or Easter, it's like, fuck, is it like, I was only saying to someone at the airport this morning, like, January, it's over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I remember the other day going, it was like November. I'm like, oh my God, like, we're going to be talking about Christmas soon. Like in a minute, we're going to be talking about, Easter and Anzac Day. It's, to me, I find it fascinating how fast time just seems to, it literally just keeps, picking up in tempo. Yeah. And to be honest, sometimes that makes me a bit anxious, because I'm like, am I going to have enough time? Which I kind of feel fucking odd saying to you.
Yeah, I was about to say that. If you feel anxious,
yeah.
fucking
I know. That's why like, I just realised what I was about to fucking say, but like, I'll say it. But, I do, so I can only empathise with those points you're saying before. And I'm like, what's your plan? You're like, well, what's your fucking plan? I'm like, yeah. And I'm sitting here and I'm anxious about, well, have I got enough time to achieve, all these things I want to achieve? Like, where do I stop biting off little things and starting little things and go, okay, finish these 3 things, then fucking sit on the porch? Well, anyone who knows me, sitting on the porch is not going to happen. Like, it'll happen, for an hour of a Friday afternoon with a cigar or whatever, but you get the point is, and that's another, really interesting, component of like psychology. I find in people, there are people that are happy, they reach a point and they're happy with that point.
Yeah.
I find, and it's not just military people, but there's a lot of people that it's just that it's like you're fucking never happy. Like, as soon as you get to here, I want there, pushes, and then there, and you just keep biting off these bits, and then it needs to be bigger or wider or harder or faster, and it just fucking keeps going.
With people, and I'm like that too, and I wish in many ways I was the other way, because I'm never happy with it. Like, I always want this and I want the next. And it's part of just people like you. It's just in us. I almost envy the other way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, fuck, I wish I could just be happy with, that's it. Fucking sitting here having a drink, whatever. Like, last night I couldn't sleep because I was in bed, because I was like, fuck, I've got so much, like, tomorrow's a busy day, say I wake up at 7 and I work out that I'm not going to get the time to do it. Like, fuck, should I get up now and keep working on this? Like, it's just like I don't have the time to do it.
Yeah, I find it extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
As in this that thing about time. So that, one thing, and the second thing is I find it extremely frustrating about, and I can get pretty fucking deep on this. I won't. It'll probably almost get emotional. Is that's that point of happiness. Like, to me, like, sometimes, and I talk to a psychologist and psychiatrist a little bit about it. I'm just like, it's like, and I've spoken to other veterans, so I think. Well, I know, I'm not the only one like this, and I don't know whether this is a veterans thing. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's 99% sure it's not. It's a lot of us. But people's ability to just accept that, whatever stage they're at in their life or whatever they've achieved and got to, is to be happy and content with that. And I'm not talking from an egotistical point of view, as in, look at the size of my fucking boat, Willy, and then you go down and buy a bigger yacht. You get those people. I mean, they're that's an egotistical fight and and arrogance. What I'm talking about is you literally have achieved what you've achieved, but you'll need to achieve more or do more. And that was certainly a huge thing for me when I transitioned. Is I remember sitting there one day and I was fucking actually thinking about, like, should I join back up? Should I? And I was sitting there thinking about, the trips I'd done and what I'd done and whether I could have done more. And I was just like, fuck, man, you did 7 tours to fucking Afghanistan. You got decorated 3 times. Like, you went to all these other countries. You did all the exchanges in fucking Japan, Germany, here, there, and everywhere else. You served 24 plus years. Like, you know what I mean? Like what the fuck do you want? Like, what more could have you done? What should have you? So I think, it's something we just need to be really, really careful and conscious of. And when I say conscious with, your friends and again, that wider family, because when they're sitting there or they see something on the news, you don't know what triggers people. I can still see something on the news. I'm going to say I'm triggered. I'm not fucking, there's a fan going on, it's a Black Hawk, but I'll see some defense related matter. And it's like, how could have I, or how should have I, or what could have been done to influence that better, or can you do this now? It's like it never fucking ends.
Never ends.
As opposed to just taking a breath and going, you know what, did a lot of good stuff. Got to be happy with that. And it's literally for me in particular with my career. It's probably only been in the last few years, or maybe even the last 2 or so years, that I've can sigh it out, and it'll be very rarely and often nothing which will kind of affect my now content state of mind. As in, I had a really good run, did a lot of fucking great things. I'm lucky to still be here several times over, and be happy with that. As in, you did your fucking piece. And I find a lot of guys, when you talk to them about getting out, they're just fucking looking backwards, and they'll look backwards, and again, it comes back to this transition. It all comes back to that period of, we need to talk to people's mindset then, and, to get them to really acknowledge the service that they've done. And again, it doesn't matter whether you did 2 fucking years and you didn't go overseas or whatever. You signed the fucking line, you did 2 years, you didn't go on a deployment, that's fine. But you've done, you know what I mean? You've been a soldier for 2 years or a sailor for 2 years or whatever, you get the fucking point. I think that's a huge... another huge thing that a lot of, especially younger generation, need to realise, because they're looking back. It's like when I joined, and I'm like, I was looking back at the fucking Vietnam veterans.
Yeah.
Because, we went through that huge peace period. So the only people cruising around who had any runs on the board were old, scaly fucking Vietnam vets. And they were all RSMs and shit like that. And you're just like, fuck, man, I'm never going to have those experiences. And, I wish I was them, and, blah, blah, blah. Neck min.
Yeah. Yeah, biggest conflict fucking since.
Yeah, so, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what, 95 minutes.
I reckon it's beer o'clock, mate.
I reckon it's a beer down. The boys are taking the piss out of me because I went down at the local pub here, and they reckon that I don't go anywhere else. And then last week, we're going to this other one. We went and they fucked up all their orders, and I'm like, see, if we went to the fucking local, we would have been good. But it's fucking good. But look, I can't thank you enough for coming on. We only know it's weird because only 10 minutes before this podcast is the first time we met. I think it's probably something that is weird to portray. We've sat here and talked for almost 2 hours, but it's like we only met 10 minutes before. We've had a couple of phone calls.
No, I've had a great chat, mate. I've really had a great chat, and like I said, it's I think I speak for a lot of people, mate. And I think it's worthwhile saying, especially because you haven't spat out a Willy show for a while. I think a lot of people will be looking forward to actually hearing you. I think that's what's been good today is, there's been a good mix, as in, got you to talk a bit as well. And like I said, I think that's important for you, and important for all the people that follow you to hear what you're thinking, how you're going, and because I do think a lot of people are wondering what you're going to do, and it's good to hear. Even though you don't have a rigid plan, but just broadly what that plan is, because people, what I mean. That's people are curious. Yeah. So no, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. I'll next time I won't be in the podcast room. We'll just go straight to the pub.
Straight to the pub. Well, I was actually saying to the boys, it's like because a couple of guys come tonight, like we get an H on the beers or what, and I'm like, yeah, that's how the podcast is going. I said I'm going to tell him that we're sitting down and doing it, but we're all micing up and going to the pub. Yeah. Best episode ever.
Yeah, I did that on one other one. I won't name who it is because you can probably work it out, but their page got shut down there a little while ago. But anyway, we did one, and we'd started with that's right. I took a couple of bottles of tequila, and like an hour or so later, it was funny, but. Just, literally, because they were going to do 2 or 3 interviews that day, so there's an overlap with when I was there and the other blokes were there, who all happened to be ex-unit guys, and then next minute we're all on the table, all on the mic, and it just started going around. But the band was just fucking unreal. Yeah. So I think maybe sometime in the future, mate, to get a bunch of guys together.
Yeah, I'd love to pair up people who are I'd love to do a podcast where it's people that aren't in the same not even unit, but I'd have you, me, and some political person who we may not agree with, but it would never get out of hand, but it would be it'd be a real back and forward seeing where. No,
I 100% agree. And if you remember what we were talking about beforehand, before we started recording about that, abstract.
Yeah.
So get some, and this isn't a slight on any of the greenies out there. I'm just using that as a colloquial term.
Yeah.
But, get some bloody, greenie or someone who's not anti-defence, but just has a complete different point of view. And no, I totally agree, mate. And then because I think we can all learn something off each other, and I think just where and how that conversation would go would be. Quite interesting.
Yeah, I reckon heaps.
Before long as no one gets stabbed.
No, you have to do it here. It's all foam and padded and shit. Speaking of drinking the podcast, on mine, the first one with Dan Pronk, because that's a 400-hour episode.
Yeah.
If you, and even if you don't listen to it, if you go minute 1 and watch us talk, and then 4 hours in, I'm just shit.
The blur.
Oh, it's just terrible.
Complete different tone.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you very much.
My absolute pleasure, Willy. Thanks very much for having me on, mate. It's been gem.
Awesome.
All right.